Hello and welcome back to Rocking Chair Society. Thank you for joining me. If you don't know it already, my name is Sylvia and this is Rocking Chair Society. I have 3 other videos that I'm waiting to edit. So I don't know if this will be edited and uploaded first to YouTube. I don't know. We'll see. But in the event that this one is uploaded first, bear in mind that I would be talking about my upcoming trip to Mississippi. Now, at this time, I've already made that trip to Mississippi and had a delightful time. I drove by myself over 600 miles each way and did a total of over 1,800 miles in just under a week, but I don't mind driving, so yeah. Today's subject has to do with my trip to Mississippi. I visited with 2 of my first cousins who live over in the Jackson area. It had been 4 years since I visited with them. I mentioned to them about the YouTube channel and how I really appreciate ancestry and getting stories from the older folks, people that have been around, and that I especially enjoyed the stories of our uncle, Roy Dunn. Roy Dunn was the last of our father's siblings. And up until 3 years ago, whenever I went to Mississippi, I was able to talk with him and get more stories and more clarification in some cases. Sadly, he passed away 2 years ago. But when I was talking to my 2 cousins, I talked about how I felt that Roy Dunn had been so credible that I appreciated the way that he would tell me stories. It would make it more credible, I felt. They said, "Oh, well, you should have talked to Bud Dunn. He could really tell some stories. He had a lot of stories." Well, I was thinking, I'm not so sure that I can appreciate the credibility of Bud Dunn. He was sort of a blowhard, I would say. Anyway, when I came back from over visiting with these 2 cousins, I met up with a gentleman who grew up next door or in the same area as the Dunns. By the way, Bud Dunn was an older brother to Roy Dunn. Roy Dunn was the last of the brothers to pass away. He passed away a couple of years ago. So this young fellow who has been in law enforcement for like over 3.5 decades knew Bud Dunn and the Dunns really well. So I had an opportunity to meet up with this fella, this retired or semi-retired law enforcement officer, and he very happily gave me some stories and some insight into Bud Dunn. He mentioned that, of course, he grew up in the same neighborhood as the Dunns and the Dunn relatives. This is a rural area, a farm area. Well, there was a little store that the fellas enjoyed meeting up at in the mornings, including the young fellas, Bud Dunn, and the older fellas. He said one morning Bud Dunn came in and was talking about the Wahoo cat. Well, of course, they found it very interesting what he had to say about the Wahoo cat. It's a monster cat. Well, the young fellas decided they were going to have some fun with Bud Dunn. So what they did was, that night, they went to the edge of Bud Dunn's property and made some sounds that they felt Bud would associate with a Wahoo cat. Sure enough, Bud came out of his house with a flashlight and looked around, but didn't stay outside for very long. He went back inside the house. The next morning, sure enough, they were all there waiting for Bud Dunn to talk about his newest adventures with the Wahoo cat. Now, there was another brother, the youngest of the brothers, A.L. Dunn. That's A.L. Dunn. He lived in the same vicinity and he had dogs. Well, A.L. was there, and he said, next time the Wahoo cat shows up, come get me, and I'll bring my dog, and we'll find the Wahoo cat. But what Bud was telling them was that the night before the Wahoo cat had come, it had just about torn up his cornfield, and that he took a shot at it. Well, the person, my informant, was saying, of course, none of that was true. So, realizing that A.L. wanted to get in on the action and to help out to find the Wahoo cat, the next night, they decided, okay. One of the fellas had a duck collar, I think it was, and he hid behind some bushes, and he made sounds with that. Well, they got A.L. who brought his dog, and he said, oh, let me bring my gun. And the young fella said, no, that's okay, we got this. Knowing that over in the bushes was one of their co-conspirators. So Bud came out, A.L. was there, and they could still hear the sounds off and on of the Wahoo cat, which was really the young fellow with the sound maker. Well, the dog sniffed around, and he looked around, but didn't find anything. So, yes, the next morning, it was back at the store, and Bud telling all about the Wahoo cat. Well, this fella that was my informant, at some point in his life later on, was in law enforcement in that area. He said he received a call that there was some man with a bobcat in a cage in his pickup truck, that he was downtown. So as he approached the back of the pickup truck, he realized, oh, it's Bud Dunn. He had trapped a bobcat, and it was in the back of his truck. Well, this fella figured, it's Bud Dunn. He probably had taken it down to the newspaper office to have its picture taken. So he figured, that's Bud Dunn. So as far as Bud Dunn's credibility, I'll stick with Roy Dunn. I hope you've enjoyed this story about the Wahoo cat. Join me again, hopefully sometime soon. In the meantime, enjoy the rocking chair. Bye-bye.